Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mio on MMA podcast. I am your host, Mio, and today I'm going to talk about UFC Vegas 93, which happened last night, and I'll touch a little bit on the PFL stuff from Thursday because, I threw some picks out there. We might as well get done. We have playoffs set for men's heavyweight, women's flyweight. We can talk about that. And the other thing I'm going to talk about really quick, well, number one, happy Father's Day to anyone who happens to be a father. There you go. Boom. Done. Anyone listening? There you go. And then on top of that, there is the fact that this card got thrown into some chaos here, talking about Vegas 93 with Ikram Alaskarov being promoted from fighting and Antonio Tricoli to fighting Robert Whittaker, which might be the single biggest increase in competition you're ever going to see for a fighter within the span of a week. that is insane. And obviously, we also lost the Tadger Ulanbekov versus Joshua Van fight when Ulanbekov missed weight. Van didn't take the fight. Van is getting some hate from Cody Durden about that. I'm sure there's some others, but I'm just bringing up Cody Durden because it's funny how Cody Durden insists that he has no issue with Asian people. None whatsoever. How dare you accuse him of such a thing? But anytime he gets a chance to dig into an Asian fighter, he will 100% do it. At this point, I assume it's just it's just a gimmick at this point. But anyways, the other thing that came out of that is obviously a lot of discussion around Khamzat Chimaev, obviously, because he pulled out of the Whittaker fight with illness, talking about retirement now. People dragging him over the coals for that. And obviously the fighters who turned down the fight, because apparently it was offered to Sean Strickland, Kamaru Usman, and at least one other fighter. Because I think Dana White, or the UFC, I can't remember if it was Dana White specifically, or somebody else, one of the matchmakers, I don't remember. I think it was Dana White, said that Ikram was the fourth fighter they asked, that there were three fighters who turned it down. I don't know who the third would have been. But here's the thing. You're asking people to take a short notice fight against Robert Whittaker while not in camp for a week down the road because, let's be honest here, we're talking about a fight date of June 22nd from Riyadh, and you would have to deal with any of the possibilities of traveling to Saudi Arabia, obviously, the acclimation and so on, taking that on short notice, and we know the UFC doesn't really pay off because, case in point, we're talking about Sean Strickland, who's waiting for a title shot. And I say this as a Sean Strickland hater, like a person who finds the man repugnant, and as a fighter, just fine. Like, I'm not ever excited for a Sean Strickland fight. It's fine. It's going to be the same thing, etc., etc. But realistically speaking, he's waiting for a title shot, and he should get it. Like, the two guys fighting for the title right now are a guy who barely beat him, DDP, and a guy that he beat, Israel Adesanya, all fairly recently. Like, he should actually be getting a title shot for beating Paulo Costa and having those guys in the picture, especially with Jared Cannonier losing to Nasruddin Imavov, because he was the only other real option. Are we going to do... I guess, hypothetical, DDP retains the title, which I am picking him to do. And you could do Robert Whittaker versus DDP, I guess. But then you're just having him fight Robert Whittaker for a number one contender fight that you're not gonna guarantee him. And then for Usman, he fought Chimaev on short notice and basically got no payoff. So why would they say yes? It's kind of the problem here is the UFC has not really rewarded anyone taking short notice fights for some time. So, of course, they're not going to do it. Anyways, quickly go over PFL here. In the PFL 4 regular season, we had Linton Vassell versus Valentin Moldavsky. This was a super close fight. It went Linton Vassell's way. I don't have a problem with that. It was a very, very close fight. Kind of sloppy. Both guys were able to get takedowns, get on top of each other. Both guys were able to land good shots. Vassell probably hitting harder. That being said, Vassell was almost finished. Very, very nearly finished. So, definitely there's a lot of there's an argument to be made that Moldavsky got disturbed by the judges here. But anyways, Vassell got the W. I don't think it really particularly matters. I don't think Vassal ended up making. Yeah, Vassal didn't end up making the playoffs. He came into that with 0 points, and Moldavsky did. I guess the only real outcome of this is that Moldavsky has to fight Oleg Popov in the opening round, and they're like training partners, Fedor and Emelianenko proteges. That being said, I think they would have anyways, because if he had won the decision against Vassal and picked up the 3 points, he would have only had 9. He would have still been behind Denis Goltsov. So Goltsov still would have been the number 1 seed and still fighting Tim Johnson. So it would be still Moldavsky versus Popov. So I guess it's like it's a close fight that could have gone either way and has absolutely no impact on the progression to the $1 million. So there you go. And then before that, Dakota Ducheva just wasted Chelsea Hackett. I don't know, man. I don't follow women's Muay Thai all that closely. I don't follow Muay Thai all that closely, period. But the idea that Chelsea Hackett keeps getting brought up as a world champion of Muay Thai, I have to look this up. I have to look this up. I'm familiar with her MMA career, and it's never been that good. There's really... Oh, she was on one of the Survivor Australias. Okay, I should. At some point, I have to go watch Survivor Australia. I love Survivor and Australian Survivor. What I've seen of it, I saw the it was like their heroes versus championship contenders. Boom, that's one. Saw that season. That was very good. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I can't really. I don't have a background for the whole thing. She is credited with being an IFMA World Muay Thai champion in 2014, 2015. I don't. What I'm getting at here is that she's not very good. What I'm getting at is that for somebody who has the accolades of Muay Thai world champion, she is not very good. And she got wasted here by Dakota Ducheva, who will go on to the playoffs. So there you go. Denis Goltsov made pretty short work, 2 minutes and 22 seconds of Thiago Santos with punches from back control. Goltsov's like back mount has to be some of the best you're going to find at heavyweight. Like he actually is legitimately lethal from that position. It's not very good otherwise. I'm not like, hey, we need to see Denis Goltsov fight a UFC champion. No. I am just saying that from the practical, if he is on your back, you are in significant trouble. Liz Carmouche picked up an armbar victory with 8 seconds left in the fight against Kana Watanabe. The fight was fine up until then. It's kind of what you would expect from the fight because they're two powerhouse women that are not really used to dealing with people who can match their power in the clinch, particularly Watanabe. And it was kind of grimy, kind of grind heavy. You know, it was, like I said, fine. Carmouche is going on to the postseason. Is Watanabe? I forget. I know she was in the mix there. No, she is not. She fell 3 points short. Yeah. Jenna Bishop's the 4th playoff fighter. That's who I was not remembering. Anyways, further on down, Taira Santos beat Jenna Bishop in a close fight, split decision. I have no real strong memories of that fight at all. I'm going to be honest. Oleg Popov beat Davion Franklin by unanimous decision. He goes on to the postseason as well. Franklin is very much like the PFL's answer to Derek Lewis. Like, he's super explosive, and it allows him to get out of bad positions. But, like, there is no technique really behind him. He is not a good grappler or striker or anything. He's just athletic. And I get it. This was only his 9th fight, and I think he's been a professional for a relatively short period of time. When was his debut? Yeah, 2020 against J.W. Kaiser. He's a guy who's been fighting for like 4 years. So, you know, fair enough that he's not very good, but I'm just noting that he is not very good. Terrell Fortune beat Marcelo Golm, almost finished him as well. He looked good. The wrestling was on point. The striking was on point. But, like, realistically, Golm is a guy who was never really going to test what Fortune had to offer. If I recall correctly, there was, like, a ridiculous betting odds on that one. Yeah. Fortune was, like, a really small favorite. And I made a nice chunk of cash off that. Alara Joan beat Shanna Young. Was that my only loss? Was that my only loss in this entire card? Was Shanna Young winning or losing? No, I had Moldavsky. Right. I went Moldavsky. I was going back and forth on Vasyl Moldavsky. I ended up settling on Moldavsky. I'll take the loss. Anyways, Alarjoan looked pretty good against Shen Young, picked up the win, but will not be going to the postseason. Tim Johnson destroyed Danilo Marquez, who, my dude, you're just not a heavyweight. I don't know how to tell you this. Juliana Velasquez beat Lisa Malden. Not much of a surprise. Malden is not very good. She's probably the worst of the flyweights in the tournament. And Sumiko Inaba had a good fight with Soraya Orozco. That was pretty fun. It was a solid fight. I enjoyed it. It was a good opener. Inaba picking up the W, probably closer than it should have been, given how the records were. But hey, Orozco is not bad. I don't really have anything else to add. So let's talk about the playoffs real quick. At women's flyweight, it's going to be Ducheva versus Bishop, Santos versus Carmouche. I am taking Carmouche. She was my pick to win, but Santos is a really tough, bad matchup for her. We'll get more into that when we get there. And Ducheva, I've got over Jenna Bishop. Jenna Bishop is a little bit too one-dimensional for me to pick on a serious level. And then at heavyweight, it's Goltsov versus Johnson. That's a tough one because Goltsov is younger. I have more faith in him. I think he's younger. I am under the impression that he is younger. He might be like an old man that I'm not realizing. Okay, yeah, he's only 34. He's the young man in that matchup. He is very, very lethal, but at the same time, his lethality comes, like I said, a lot from the back mount. It's hard to get Tim Johnson there. That'll be interesting. I'll have to look some footage there. I'm gonna have a hard time with that. And Popov versus Moldavsky. I kind of have to go with Moldavsky, just being the more veteran guy of like the same coaching set. But Popov has been pretty good in this whole tournament. So regular season, I guess the term is season. But at the end of the day, I probably will go Moldavsky. But I'll do some fight looking there, some review and get on with it. Anyways. Over to the UFC action, we had the main event of Tetsuya Taira, Alex Perez, ending in an injury to Perez, which has sparked a lot of conversation. Was it a freak injury? Was it intentional? My answer, it's in the middle, because to me, a freak injury is something that your opponent isn't really involved in, which is pretty rare. I mean, that's the idea of a freak injury. It is, if you're standing with someone on your back and they're moving around and they're, doing things with their legs, stretching it around, messing up with your legs, messing up with your balance, affecting how your body is carrying the weight in a balance sense, yeah, injuries are going to happen. That being said, I've never quite seen an injury like that, so I cannot give Taira like intentionality. You know what I'm saying? Like I cannot say that like his goal was to blow out Perez's knee. Like, no. But, his movement definitely, his placement, his weight specifically definitely played a role on that. Round one, I had the hot take that I scored it for Taira, and I know the judges scored it for Perez, and I don't have a problem with it. I'm going to read the stats. They're not all telling. Perez outlanded him 27-18 in total strikes, 23-17 in in significant strikes. Had the takedown for 24 seconds of top control. So I get that. That looks like a win. I just thought that a lot of what Perez was doing was not landing very clean at all. And what Taira was doing, and admittedly this required Taira to get like a Muay Thai clinch every time Perez came blitzing in before he would like really be comfortable to throw strikes. But what he did hit him with, those 14 significant strikes, were very clean. And that's why I went there. Now, if you had Perez winning, I don't have a problem with that. That's fine. He landed more shots. He was the aggressor a lot of the time. There was some passivity moments for Taira where there was not a lot of activity coming from him. I get it. I understand. I see the through logic. There you go. And then, the second round comes around. Taira gets on his back, and that's all she wrote. And the round wasn't really all that much different. I mean, again, it was very much the same of Perez probably landing more strikes. I mean, I'm sure, even with the back control, Taira pulled ahead 25-18. But like up until that point, I imagine Perez was landing more shots. And Taira had 2 takedowns. One didn't last very long. The other also didn't last very long. Ended up getting back up. But I think we saw the pattern what we were going to get. Taira's striking being a lot cleaner. and him not being overwhelmed by the physicality, the aggression, and the intensity of Perez, he was probably going to win. Now, I was actually just having a conversation on Twitter about this type of thing. MMA is an incredibly chaotic and at times random sport. So obviously, I am not saying that like there is no future where Perez won this fight. It's just that I think what Perez was doing is not something he has any history of like really keeping up. And Taira was able to land some very clean strikes. And while he was not able to control Perez in the second round, he was getting takedowns. He was getting the back control. He was sort of dictating those exchanges with greater frequency than Perez. I think he was on his way to a win. But obviously, winning by injury is going to affect this a little bit. I'm not sure what to do with him. He called out Mohamed Mokaev after the fight. I don't think that fight's going to happen because Mokaev is booked against Manal Kopp. I think if he wasn't booked, I would be perfectly fine with that booking. But he is fighting Kopp, and he's either going to beat Manal Kopp, in which case he's beyond Taira for the time being, or he's going to lose to Kopp, and that's going to be a less appealing fight for both for both the UFC and for Taira. So I don't know. Excuse me if there's any like rumbling on the microphone. I'm quite hungry at the moment, and I probably should have grabbed something to eat before recording here. But anyways, for Taira, I've got Mathalis Nicolau, which is a really, really, really weird pick, obviously for next opponent because he just lost to Alex Perez, and I think he's on a 2-fight losing streak if I am not mistaken. Pretty sure he lost to Brandon Royval before that, but he's an appropriate location, and he's a guy who at least asks some questions of Taira because that's kind of the thing here is that this Perez fight was supposed to be the big question-asking fight of Taira, and he wins by injury. It's hard to progress much above that. So I've got Nicolau. And for Perez, I need to know the injury, how long he's going to be out. The division may be in a completely different place by the time he comes back. Miles John versus Douglas Silva de Andrade was not very good. And honestly, that's about as far as I'm going to describe it. It was a lot of like, don't get me wrong, it was a lot of like intensity and throwing big shots. And if that's your thing, that's your thing. But like, there was a lack of combinations going on. It was, all things considered, pretty inactive. I mean, for a bantamweight fight, this fight had 86 significant strikes landed and a total of 88 total strikes landed. And like, Johns ended up throwing under 100 strikes. Like for bantamweight, that's a very inactive fight. And it's not because there was a lot of like takedowns or ground control either, because they collectively went 0-4 on takedowns and had 12 seconds of control per UFC stats. So I don't know. Not a great fight. The only thing I'm going to break down here is I have no problem with Johns winning. I scored the fight for Johns. So obviously I have no problem with him winning. That being said, I do have a problem with one card. That is Junichiro Kamijo, who scored at 29-28 for Johns. The other two judges gave it 30-27 for Johns. I'm not happy with those, but they have a through logic to them. What I do not like about Kamijo's card is he gave round 1 to Johns. Now, for comparison, Johns landed 8 strikes in round 1. Now, in fairness, Andrade only landed 12. And that's why I don't really have a problem with, I don't really have a problem with the 30-27s. Because even though I scored this round for Andrade, he didn't do much. There was very little happening here. There was a lot of missing. Something like 12 for 27 striking and like 12 strikes landed. No. There's no world that I'm going to be like, that has to go to Andrade. That has to be his round. But if you're going to give Andrade a round, which Kamijo did, it's the first. It's not the third. So I don't know what that scorecard is about. So Miles Jones got the win. I'm not at all convinced about him. I thought that this was honestly a regression fight for both guys. Like the progress that they had made over their careers just went out the window, and they just slang like they just went out there and slang and bang, man. Anyways, for next opponents, I've got for Miles Johns, Ronnie Barcelos. I've got for Andrade, Farid Basharat. You could also go Javit Basharat as well. Uh, it's not just because they're brothers, but it is because they are probably the most similar brothers in terms of like level that we've ever had. Like obviously the Diaz brothers are like are very similar fighters. Makes sense. You've been training together for like since you were kids, basically. Same with Micah Miller, Cole Miller, and all that. But the Basharats have a remarkable mirror image thing going where they're like very much in the same neighborhood of fighting, essentially. Anyways, that's what I would do. Lucas Almeida versus Timothy Kwamba. Kwamba got beaten up here. He got dropped twice in the first round. I know they only credited it with one, but there was two, if not three, drops in this fight for Almeida. And he did his stuff. Kwamba kind of came on in the third round, probably picked that up, although I scored it for Almeida. On a rewatch, I might change my mind. It was a close round. It was a close round. But the first two rounds were definitely Almeida's. Kwamba couldn't really make him wrestle with him. And I don't know if it was that he got dropped and hurt pretty early in the fight, but his head movement was not there. His feints, his striking was very, very obvious. There wasn't a lot of creativity going on. There wasn't a lot of throwing Almeida off the scent. And if you're not going to throw Almeida off the scent, he is a very, very good nuts and bolts volume kickboxer, and he will beat you up. Now, I think I saw no 10-8 first round for Almeida on any of the cards, and I'm not loving that. Yeah, 10-9, 10-9. Yeah, nothing. Man, even some of the media scores, Sure Dogs, 2 scores didn't have a 10-8. Wrestling Observer Ryan Frederick and MMA Uno didn't have it. Come on, guys. Give those 10-8s out. Give them out. Oh, one of the Sure Dog scores did. Tristan Critchfield gave it 10-8. I think that was a clear 10-8. Like, you drop someone multiple times in a round, and also, I'm pretty sure have a significant edge in, like, volume. I could be wrong. Yeah, he doubled them up. 30 to 13. Next opponents, I've got Almeida versus Jack Jenkins, and I've got Kwamba. Here's my weird proposal for Kwamba, and it's not the first time I made this. Honestly, send him back to the regional team. Keep him on like some kind of developmental release contract or something, or maybe call him up to Dana White Contender Series again. I don't know. I'm not saying cut him. I'm not saying end ties with him. It's just that I think that the flaws he has, I don't know how you work on them in the UFC. Because this is the featherweight division. You can't go much lower than Almeida. Like, where do you go after that? And it's just kind of like basic fundamental stuff that he needs to work on. So there's that. Garrett Armfield versus Brady Heastan was a fun time. A lot of good scrambles. And in the third round, Heastan got a rear naked choke that he'd been going for like 3 or 4 times throughout the course of the fight. I guess the problem here is that Armfield was like pretty willing to wrestle with Heastan. And that was the mistake, essentially. I picked Armfield in this fight under the assumption that he would be the better striker, which he was. And, he dropped Heastan, particularly in the second round this came up. Heastan dropped him with a hard check hook, falls up with a flurry, drops Heastan again, like 2 down, boom, boom. And then, like, goes into Heastan's guard, and he's, like, throwing some ground and pound, which is fine. But, like, if you don't finish him immediately, and this is a guy that only grapples, step back, step out of the guard. And by the end of the second round, he's finding off yet another rear naked choke. And, that's the problem. Armfield fails on fight IQ here so badly. I did score the second round for him. I scored the first round for Heastan. I had it 1-1 going into the third. Anyways, Heastan gets the win, and the judges are taken out of it. Heastan has been way better than I thought he was going to be. I kind of said this, like, he came in too tough with like a the most can crushing record you've ever seen on Tough. And you know what? He's one-dimensional as all heck. His striking is bad, but he's got the athleticism, and he's like the sick jitsu. He's the sick jitsu prototype, where it's like he's a pretty decent athlete. He's got a pretty decent wrestling game, and he's crazy. There you go. He says he's a company man. He says you can save on the airfare by putting him on the August 3rd card with his teammate Michael Kiss because they got the same coaches, and against anybody. So he's going for the company man route that I mean, it'll keep him around for a while, but like at some point, he'll, there's only so much Sam Alvey you can do. Anyways, I've got he's standing against Raul Rosas Jr. as an interesting fight. That hit me when I just saw Raul Rosas when I was scrolling through the Tapology rankings. It was like, you know what? I have a lot of questions about Rosas. His ability to do anything other than out grapple kind of bad grapplers. Here's Brady Easton. Armfield, I got against Arichi Lang. Asu Almabaya versus Jose Johnson was not good. That's all I've got. It was not good. 25 significant strikes in the entire fight. It was a lot of wrestling, a lot of control for Almabaya staying on top. Johnson being lively off the bottom and keeping it from settling, but just not actually being able to get to a position where he wasn't being controlled and fighting off rear naked chokes, kind of like Armfield versus Heastand, but with less dynamicism. Anyways, after the fight, Almabayev wants a KKF fight, Kaikar France. That's really unlikely. I have him against the winner of Cody Durden versus Bruno Silva. And for Jose Johnson, back to 135, please. If you're going to keep doing flyweight, I have no bookings, because what do you do with a 6 foot tall flyweight? He exists so far out of the parameters of the physicality of the division that I just don't know what to do. It's not like you can test somebody with him. What are you testing for? How you can fight a 6 foot guy? I don't know. Anyways, Adam Fugit versus Josh Quinlan. I think I got the dynamic of this fight pretty correctly, honestly. I scored it for Quinlan for the record, 2-1. That being said, I have no problem with Fugit picking up the victory. Let's look at the stats here real quick. Fugit did outland him in both in the second and the third round. I have no problem with that being given to him. That being said, this is another one where I don't argue with the 29-28 Fugit. I argue with the rounds, because it's interesting that Judge Chris Lee, who is very commonly one of my absolute kickbags, scored round 1 for Fugit and round 2 for Quinlan. And I don't get that, because round 1 and round 2 have a very, very similar dynamic. No takedowns, no control. Pretty much just a volume affair from Fugit. Quinlan hitting, I thought, a little bit harder in both rounds, but either way, either you thought Quinlan was hitting harder or you didn't. And in which case, Quinlan outlanded him by 1 strike in the first round. I know that that's oversimplification, everything. It is. But he landed more. He got outlanded 27-16 in the second round. So again, the internal logic here. I could accept a 30-27 Fugit. There is no definitive Quinlan round here. But again, if Quinlan won a round, it's the first round. What are you doing, Chris Lee? Not a great fight, not a great booking. I was pretty anti to begin with, because these are two guys in their 30s. They're not prospects. And they're guys I have no faith in being able to fix what is wrong with their game. In Quinlan's case, it's that his game is too bare bones to really work. He got here on athleticism, basically, and now he's fighting guys who either can match his athleticism or at the very least are not disturbed by his athleticism. And as a result, he's losing. And in Fugit's case, it's that he's actually the opposite. He lacks fundamental. He's quite creative and unpredictable. In certain senses, in other senses, not so much. But at the end of the day, this was just not very good. I'm not gonna bother much more with it. Fugit versus the winner of Oban Elliott versus Preston Parson. Quinlan, I'm thinking, goes back to Dana White Contender Series fodder, because he's lost a couple in a row. Nate Maness versus Jimmy Flick. This was probably one of Jimmy Flick's better fights, honestly. He was in it the whole way, but he lost. 30-27 Maness is the only card I can see. I'm actually curious. I think I saw a 29-28 for Maness. So what round did somebody give Flick? Judge Tony Weeks gave Flick the first round. He did have a good sub attempt in the first round, but with the Von Flue choke, but so did Maness. And Maness outstruck him quite badly. I guess he had a minute and 5 top control. I don't know. I guess he had top control in that round. He didn't really have it in the second or the third. I guess that's what it comes down to. Tony Weeks is an old school judge, I guess. But anyways, I think that's a third 27. Anyways, Manus has kind of like the similar problem to Jose Johnson in the sense that like he doesn't fit within the division at all. He's 5'10". He should be back at 135, but whatever. He's making weight and seems to be okay at it. So put him against Charles Johnson. And for Flick, I've got Dennis Bondar if he's still kicking around. The problem with Flick is I'm never going to pick him in a fight. I'm never going to be excited. Like, don't get me wrong. He can do some incredible stuff. Like, all of his wins are really, really cool because they're like, they're leaping for submissions and stuff. But at the end of the day, he's just not that athletic, doesn't really have a striking game, doesn't really have a wrestling game. He's really just a sub hunter. I don't think that archetype can work. Carly Giudice versus Gabriela Fernandez. I had Fernandez winning rounds 1 and 2. Giudice winning the third. Now, a lot of people had the first round going to Giudice, and I've heard the arguments because I got into a couple of them, and it essentially boiled down to she landed more strikes, and she did. She outlanded Fernandez 64-44 in the first round. I just thought that Fernandez landed way harder shots, and it didn't seem like anyone was really able to disagree with that. There were some ideas that like the damage that was showing on Giudice's eye was just like the byproduct of being a really pale fighter or whatever. But I thought her right eye got fairly messed up in the first round. Like not like fight ending. Doctor needs to check on it. Whatever. I think the doctor did check on it, but nothing that we haven't seen before. But like that was the most significant damage of the round. And like I said, Fernandez was landing like some really, really good stuff. Like I understand Giudice outlanded her. And I understand that like I come out of this fight with way more of a higher opinion of Giudice than I do Fernandez. I want to make that clear. Because like Fernandez has been at this for like a decade. And Giudice has been at this for like 3 years. And there's like that's a 3-time gap difference in terms of like prep time. And Fernandez has been in the UFC. This was Giudice's debut. Like this was a no-win scenario for Fernandez unless she just like nuked Giudice. Like she went out there, she looked fine, but like she was not asked the questions that she has been able to answer in the past, which is a takedown game. Even in this fight, she got taken down 2 out of 4 times Giudice went for takedowns, and Giudice's takedowns are not very good. I think that people got carried away with how good Carly Giudice for her experience level looks, and she absolutely does. I have very, very good expectations for this woman. Even though I have not seen her win a fight that means a damn, she fought Ernesta Caracate very closely. She fought this one very closely. Like she just has those natural instincts of a fighter. She doesn't wilt under the pressure. She doesn't seem to mind getting hit. She remains clear-eyed. She fires back. She has insane cardio. She is tough. So I think she's going to do some things, but I don't know. There were some people that very, very, very unhappy that she didn't win this fight, and I think you have to go Fernandez. Like, again, it's damage-based criteria. Round 2, I don't think there's much of a question on because Fernandez landed more shots and the harder shots in that round. It's hard to do. And then round 3, there's no question. Fernandez ran out of gas. She faded pretty badly in Giudice's volume and so on. Just takes over by the third round. Fernandez, I have Marina Moroz. I've got Giudice against Dana White Contender Series fodder because she has lost 2 in a row. We want to, give her something easy. We want to give her something to actually put that W on the board. Because right now, that's kind of the problem is that she's looked great in her 2 losses. But they are 2 losses. Showcase. Jekka Sergey, Weston Wilson. Weston Wilson wound up getting a submission here. I still think they should both be cut. I still have no interest in this. Wilson won a fight without landing a significant strike. That's insane. Anyways, he got a triangle arm bar at the end of the day. Jekka Sergey is not good. Weston Wilson is not good. They are not good for different reasons. Sergey, it's because he's not good at anything technically. Wilson, he just has no athleticism. There you go. Anyways, Wilson will be around. Sergey will probably be around because he's part of the Indonesian push that they're trying to make. I understand it. There's not really a lot much better out there. If you're going to have like kind of a can fighter, it might as well be from a region you're trying to push into. Melquizael Costa versus Shailen Nurembeke was not very good. And Costa thankfully ended it in the third round with a rear naked choke. Nuremberg was very, 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 that's enough varies, I think, inactive in this fight. He was able to get uh, 4 takedowns on 10 attempts and did not land double digit strikes in any round, despite having nearly 4 minutes of control time in the first and 2.5 in the second. It's just bad. It's just bad. Moving on. Moving on from that fight, I guess look at my opponents. I've got Costa versus Isaac Delgarian and Nuremberg versus Blake Builder. And then we had Julia Pilastri versus Josephine Knudsen, which really actually was kind of a good start to the card. I'm not entirely certain that the card got any better at any point. I mean, I guess Fernandez versus Judice was better. So, thumbs up to the ladies for going out there and delivering and doing a good job. The men, not so much. This was not a very good card. Anyways, Knudsen's range and ability to land front kicks, particularly to the body and to the thigh, actually, a fair bit, were able to keep the range and do her thing. Knudsen has a very, very good range kickboxing game. I do worry. She's only 5'3". She does it with a 60-inch reach. I know it's straw weight, which is small, but I really do feel like this is for her game specifically, this is an atomweight build. But anyways, Pilastri took a long time to get going. She did get a takedown at the end of the first round for about 20 seconds of dominance from mount position. And then in the second round, which a lot of people gave her, she was able to get an early takedown. Not that early, I guess. There's about 2.5 minutes left in the round. And she did cut open the eye of Knudsen. She had a little bit of the trickle of blood going down the side. She did very, very little with her top control in round 2. Had she done what she did in round 1 in round 2, I think I would have given her the round. But as it turns out, it was 2 minutes and 55 seconds of top control. But she landed 5 significant strikes, 16 total strikes, to 24 sig and 32 total for Knudsen. I don't know. And then in the third round, Pilastri again got a takedown, got a submission attempt. It was Brain, why are you doing this to me? Why am I not remembering? Was it an arm triangle? It was an arm triangle. Yeah, it was an arm triangle from half guard that took a while to get to the mount. But once you got to the mount, Knudsen ended up back on top with about 25 seconds left, and that was the fight basically. And prior to that, it was Knudsen lighting her up on the feet again and doing her thing. I thought if anything, the third round is actually the one you could give Pilastri because she had the submission attempt, the takedown, and that's really about it. Whereas in round 2, it was just top control, but mostly because she got trapped in a head scissors and really stalled out. But anyways, Knudsen I've got against Emily Ducote. I got Pilastri versus Melissa Martinez. Assuming she's still around, I noticed that she hadn't fought since 2022. She was booked in April 2023, pulled out. I couldn't find a reference as to what for. So here's hoping nothing's up with Melissa Martinez that is bad. But she could be a good fighter for Pilastri. I don't know. I was a little bit let down by Pilastri in this fight because she normally lives up to her name of being a bit of a psycho. And in this fight, she got cowed into submission. Hesitation. There we go. It was like she was surprised by Knudsen's ranged kicking game. And she had no answer for it. Which makes no sense because that's what Knudsen does. Forgive me for thinking that Pilastri would come in prepared. Anyways, I did pick Knudsen though. So, anyways, pick-wise, I did pretty well. I think I was largely on the money here today and mostly got wins. Let's see, Knudsen won, Costa won, Fernandez won, Manus won. That's 4. Almabaya 5. Almeida 6. No, I had Kawamba. So I made it 5. Yeah, okay. I went on a bit of a poor ending here. I went 1 for 3 in the last 4 fights, but again, I think I got their dynamics fairly close. The only fights I think that I didn't get Miles Johns versus Andrade. I did not foresee Miles Johns and Andrade regressing horrendously, and I thought Kawamba would be a little bit more game, and I thought Armfield would be a bit smarter. I guess that kind of narrows it down. But before that, everything was going pretty according to plan. Even though Weston Wilson picked up that win, obviously. But you know what? If Wilson was going to win, I did say how he would do it, and it is how he did it. So there you go. Anyways, check out the links down below for my social medias, my video gaming stuff, the MMA Discord, simulator, and that's about it. So again, happy Father's Day. Enjoy it.